When someone gives you the silent treatment, you feel it in your chest before you even realize what's happening. 1 minute, you're having a conversation, maybe it's even a disagreement, maybe it's just a normal moment, and then suddenly the air shifts. They go quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the sharp, cutting quiet that feels like a door slammed in your face. And you know instantly this isn't rest. This isn't someone taking a breath to think. This is punishment. This is control. That's why we have to start here, by exposing the game for what it really is. The silent treatment is not just someone needing space. It's not them cooling down. It's not maturity. It's not restraint. It is a weapon, plain and simple. And the reason it works so well is because it hides in plain sight. Silence is so easy to disguise as discipline. But let's not sugarcoat it. When it's used as a tool to manipulate, silence is emotional warfare. And here's the trick. The person who uses the silent treatment isn't always doing it out loud. They don't announce, "I'm about to manipulate you." They just disappear. They just withdraw. They fold their arms, turn their head, and withhold the most basic form of connection, communication. And what happens to you? You spiral, you panic, you start to think, what did I do wrong? Why won't they talk to me? How do I fix this? That's the game. That's the trap. Because in those moments, their silence says, my voice has the power. My presence is the prize. My withdrawal is punishment. And the more you chase, the more power they gain. That's why step one in shutting down the silent treatment is not about reacting, not about fixing. It's about exposing. It's about saying to yourself, wait a second. This isn't about me being unworthy. This is about them trying to control. And when you name it for what it is, manipulation, not maturity, you strip away its disguise. You stop treating silence like a mystery you have to solve and start treating it like a tactic you refuse to bow down to. But here's the hard part. When someone gives you the silent treatment, it doesn't just feel like silence. It feels like rejection. It feels like abandonment. It taps into the deepest fear inside all of us that we're not enough, that we're not loved, that we're being pushed out. And that fear makes the silence deafening. It makes you want to break it at any cost. But if you're going to shut it down, you have to shift the lens. You have to remind yourself silence is not proof of my inadequacy. Silence is proof of their inability to communicate, their inability to handle conflict, their inability to engage in respect. That's what's on display, not your unworthiness, but their insecurity. So let me tell you the truth, silence doesn't make them powerful. Silence makes their weakness loud. It's not strength to withhold words. Strength is choosing the hard conversation. Strength is leaning into discomfort with courage. Silence, when it's weaponized, is cowardice dressed as control. And once you see it that way, you can no longer be tricked into thinking it's strength. I need you to picture this. You're standing in front of a closed door. Behind it, someone has gone silent. They're not answering. They're not engaging. And in your mind, that door starts to look bigger and heavier than it really is. You start believing you can't move forward until they open it. But here's the shift. You don't need that door to open for you to live your life. You don't need their voice to validate your worth. You don't need their silence to keep you hostage. The door only has power if you keep knocking. That spiral is exactly what fuels the silent treatment, because it takes your focus off their behavior and puts it onto your self-worth. And once you're questioning your worth, they've already won. That's why the second key to shutting down the silent treatment is this: stay grounded in your worth. Easier said than done, right? Because when someone withdraws their attention, it feels personal. It feels like they're rejecting you. But let's get this straight. Their silence is not a statement about your value. It's a mirror reflecting their limitations. A mature person says, I need space. A respectful person says, I need time to process this. A communicative person says, "I'm upset, let's revisit this later." An insecure person, they vanish, they withhold, they punish. And that's on them, not you. You staying grounded in your worth means you don't internalize their silence as your shame. You don't shrink. You don't beg. You don't start performing just to get their voice back. Instead, you breathe, you remind yourself, I am enough, whether they speak or not. I am worthy whether they validate me or not. Their silence cannot strip me of what was never theirs to give, my value. Think about it this way. If someone gives you the silent treatment, it's like they're pulling the plug on the lamp in the room. Suddenly, it's dark. But does that mean the lamp has no light? No. The power source is just disconnected. And that's the trap. You start believing you're powerless without their plug, without their connection. But the truth is, you're the source. You've always been the source. Their silence doesn't take away your light. It just reveals that they don't know how to stay plugged in. Staying grounded in your worth also means refusing to dance for their attention. Because the more you chase, the more you teach them that silence works. If every time they go quiet you panic, you beg, you apologize for things you didn't do, that's reinforcement. That's you training them to use silence again. And I promise you this, if you reward silence with attention, you'll keep getting silence. So how do you break it? You ground yourself. You say, I'm not chasing. I'm not begging. I'm not performing for the privilege of being spoken to. Instead, you get calm. You go about your day. You pour into yourself. You show them not with arrogance, not with anger, but with quiet confidence that your worth doesn't fluctuate with their mood. And here's the power in that: the louder their silence gets, the more grounded you become. Because silence is designed to destabilize you. It's designed to make you wobble, to knock you off balance. But when you stay rooted, when you plant your feet in your worth, their silence loses its power. It becomes background noise instead of the script of your life. I want you to picture a tree in the middle of a storm. The wind howls, the branches whip, but the roots are deep. The tree doesn't fall because the roots hold steady. That's you. Their silence is the storm. But your worth, your identity, your value, that's the roots. And if you know who you are, if you've dug deep into your own foundation, their silence can blow as hard as it wants and you will not fall. But desperation is exactly what gives their silence power. Because if the silent treatment is a fishing hook, desperation is the bait. The moment you start scrambling, pleading, over-explaining, they've got you on the line. And that's why the third key to shutting down the silent treatment is this: respond with clarity, not desperation. Let me show you what that looks like. Imagine this: they've withdrawn, they're giving you nothing, the room feels icy. In that moment, instead of panic, you ground yourself, you slow your breath, you remind yourself, this is a tactic, not a truth. This is manipulation, not maturity. And from that grounded place, you choose clarity. Clarity sounds like this: I see that you're upset. When you're ready to talk, I'm here. That's it. Short, direct, clean. No begging, no chasing, no spinning yourself into a knot trying to earn their attention back. Clarity is calm. Clarity is confident. Clarity says, I value communication, but I don't perform for silence. And let's be real, it takes discipline to stay in clarity, because everything in you wants to fill the silence. Your anxiety wants to rush in. Your fear wants to fix it. But if you can resist that urge, if you can sit in the discomfort and still respond with clarity, you've already flipped the dynamic, because what clarity does is remove their power to control the narrative. Think about it. If you come at them with desperation, the story is, I'm chasing, they're withholding, they win. If you come at them with clarity, the story shifts. I'm steady, I've named the behavior, and the next move is theirs. That's how you change the energy in the room. Here's another example. They're stonewalling you, not answering a question. Instead of spiraling, you calmly say, It's important to me that we communicate. When you're ready to talk respectfully, let me know. Boom. Clear boundary. No fireworks. No groveling. And here's the beauty. Clarity makes their silence uncomfortable for them. Because now the spotlight isn't on your reaction, it's on their refusal. And let me tell you something else, clarity is contagious. The first time you use it, it may feel foreign. Your body might shake. Your mind might scream at you to say more, explain more, soften it with extra words. But over time, clarity becomes muscle memory. It becomes your default setting. And when you get good at clarity, the people around you have to adjust. They either rise to the level of communication you've set, or they fall away. Either way, you win. But here's the trap to avoid. Clarity is not coldness. It's not shutting down, slamming a door, or using silence back as revenge. That's just playing the same game in reverse. Clarity is different. Clarity is steady. Clarity says, I won't match your immaturity, but I won't shrink in it either. It's emotional adulthood, it's power without aggression. Picture it like this. You're standing in a storm. Rain is pouring, thunder is crashing, and someone is trying to intimidate you with their chaos. Most people panic, they run, they beg, they scream back at the storm. But clarity is like opening an umbrella. The storm is still there, but you're covered, you're calm, you're protected. You're not denying the storm, you're just refusing to be drowned by it. That's what happens when you respond with clarity to the silent treatment. You acknowledge reality without losing your footing. You don't need to scream. You don't need to chase. You don't need to prove your worth with over-explanation. You simply plant your words like a flag in the ground, clear, calm, steady. And let's be real, this doesn't just apply to relationships. This applies at work, with friends, with family. Because the silent treatment shows up everywhere. Maybe it's your coworker who goes radio silent on an email thread to make a point. Maybe it's a sibling who suddenly ghosts when they're upset. Maybe it's even your parent who uses distance instead of dialogue. The temptation in all those scenarios is to chase. But the power move is clarity. And here's the kicker, clarity is not for them, it's for you. It's not about magically making them talk. It's about keeping your integrity intact. It's about making sure you don't lose yourself in someone else's manipulation. Because at the end of the day, you can't force someone to communicate, but you can control how you show up in the silence. And that's where your power move comes in. You take back control of the temperature. You decide how warm or cold the room feels, not them. Now, let's be real. It's not easy because silence is uncomfortable. It makes you feel like you're suffocating. But when you let their silence dictate your emotional climate, you give them all the power. The key is this: don't fight the cold by freezing yourself, and don't try to light a fire out of desperation. Instead, you bring steady warmth. You hold the thermostat in your own hands. So what does that look like? It looks like calmness. It looks like steady tone. It looks like you refusing to overheat just because they've iced you out. Imagine you're sitting across from someone who's withdrawn, arms crossed, lips sealed. The tension is thick. You take a breath. You relax your shoulders. And instead of scrambling, you simply say, I'll be ready to talk when you are. That's you turning the dial. That's you warming the air without begging for theirs. And here's why that matters. Because emotional climates are contagious. If you meet their ice with panic, the room gets colder. If you meet their ice with fire, anger, yelling, the room gets hotter, but not healthier. But if you meet their ice with steady warmth, you create an environment that says, I won't let you freeze me out, but I also won't burn this place down to force you back in. That balance is what breaks the cycle. Think about the people in your life you respect the most. They're not the ones who explode when things get tense. They're not the ones who retreat into passive aggression. They're the ones who stay centered, the ones who don't get pulled into emotional chaos. That's what controlling the temperature is. It's refusing to let someone else's immaturity decide your climate. And here's the thing, controlling the temperature doesn't mean pretending you're not hurt. It doesn't mean stuffing your emotions down. It means processing them without letting them dictate your reaction. It's the difference between saying, "This hurts, but I'm still steady," versus "This hurts, so I'm gonna flail." One keeps the thermostat in your hands. The other hands it right over to them. Picture it like this: you walk into a room and someone's blasting cold air from the AC. You can either sit there shivering, complaining, and begging them to turn it down, or you can grab a blanket, adjust your own layer, and stay comfortable regardless. You didn't deny the cold, but you didn't let it control you either. That's the mindset shift. Now, let's talk about what happens when you do this consistently. When you stay calm in the middle of their silence, you change the dynamic. Suddenly, their withdrawal doesn't rattle you. It doesn't hijack your mood. And that unsettles them because the power of the silent treatment is in its effect. If it stops affecting you, it stops working. And here's the kicker: when you control the temperature, you send an unspoken message that's louder than any words. You're saying, "I am not at the mercy of your silence. I regulate me. I decide the climate I live in." And that's a power most people never tap into because they're too busy reacting instead of regulating. This is the difference between someone who's controlled by the silent treatment and someone who rises above it. One is tossed around like a thermostat set by someone else's mood. The other sets the climate of their own life. And when you start living like that, not only do you shut down the silent treatment, you also become unshakable in every area of your relationships. But here's the shift. You don't need their permission to move forward. You don't need their permission to be okay. You don't need their permission to say, "I'm not going to live in limbo anymore." The silent treatment is a trap that makes you think you can't move until they do. And when you buy into that, you start begging with your silence, pleading with your energy, hoping they'll notice how much you're hurting and finally throw you crumbs of attention. That's the exact dynamic they want. So how do you flip it? You stop waiting. You stop holding your breath. You stop playing the game of when will they talk to me again? And you start living as if you don't need the conversation to define your worth. And this isn't about pretending it doesn't bother you. It's about choosing not to let it control you. You say to yourself, "This silence doesn't dictate my self-respect. This doesn't pause my life. I can keep moving, keep speaking, keep showing up because my identity isn't chained to their attention." I'll tell you this, nothing unsettles someone using silence as control more than when you stop waiting for their signal. When you stop checking your phone every 5 minutes, when you stop pacing around wondering what you did wrong, when you stop rehearsing your apology before they've even broken the silence. Instead, you live, you smile, you laugh, you answer when they finally break the silence, but on your terms. That's when they realize the power they thought they had evaporates in their hands. And here's the beauty. You don't even have to make a dramatic announcement about it. You don't have to text, "I don't need your permission." You don't have to post a quote online to show how strong you are. You prove it quietly by no longer centering your world around their response. Silent treatments thrive on one thing: your dependence. So starve them of it. You give them nothing to feed on when you stop asking for permission to exist. So the next time someone shuts you out, don't go banging on their emotional door. Don't beg them to let you back into the room. Walk past it. Stand tall in your lane. Take your space and live in it fully. That's how you reclaim the one thing silence tries to steal: your freedom. So the question is, what lesson do you want them to learn? Because if you don't set the curriculum, they'll write it for you. And their version will say, "Ignore me, and I'll work harder. Disrespect me, and I'll apologize. Withhold from me, and I'll beg. That's the course they want you to pass. But you don't have to enroll. You can rewrite the lesson plan today. Teaching them how to treat you doesn't mean yelling. It doesn't mean revenge. It doesn't mean stonewalling them back. It means clarity, consistency, and boundaries. It means saying, I don't respond to punishment tactics. If you want to have an adult conversation, I'm here for it. But if silence is the tool, I won't participate. And then, here's the hard part. You follow through. Because people believe what you say only when your actions match it. And yes, they may not like it. They may push back. They may try to pull you back into the old dance. But when you hold steady, when you stop rewarding the silent treatment with desperation, when you calmly remove yourself from the game, they learn. Maybe not overnight, maybe not without resistance, but they learn. Because silence loses its power when the other person no longer fears it. And here's the deeper truth. This isn't just about them. It's about you. It's about teaching yourself how you deserve to be treated. It's about proving to yourself that your peace doesn't depend on someone else's mood. It's about reminding yourself that you are not a prisoner of someone's silence. That's the real graduation. That's when you walk out of the classroom of manipulation and step into the freedom of self-respect. So if you hear nothing else today, hear this. Every moment you spend waiting for them to speak is a moment you could spend speaking life back into yourself. Every time you teach them that silence doesn't break you, you teach you that you are stronger than the tactic. And every time you hold your ground, you build a new standard, not just for them, but for every relationship that comes after. Because at the end of the day, silence isn't your enemy. Permission isn't your need. The lesson isn't theirs to own, it's yours. You teach people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. And when you decide that your worth is non-negotiable, that your peace is priceless, and that your voice is not something to be silenced, you don't just shut down the silent treatment, you rise above it. So the next time someone tries to control you with silence, remember this, you're not waiting for their words, you already have your own. You're not begging for their attention, you already have your worth. And you're not asking for permission to move forward, you already hold the power. Stand tall, stay calm, and teach them with your actions. This is how I deserve to be treated. Because when you do, the silent treatment stops being a weapon and starts being a reminder of just how unshakable you've become.